Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation. And viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, the state's latest PFAS study finds toxins in water across New Mexico. We'll hear from an expert.
Trying to identify, address, remediate, and hold people accountable for contamination.
And reaction to the arrest of the leader of Cowboys for Trump as presidential power changes hands. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Gene Grant. New beginnings this week as the legislature starts its 2021 session and the Biden administration gets to work. The Line Opinion panel will touch on both and take a closer look at an immigration plan that would affect New Mexico. And we'll talk to a band manager about the long road ahead for professional musicians who were silenced by COVID and some feel ignored by aid programs. Here's the line. The first week of the state legislative session is in the books. Frankly, it's been weird. Plexiglass panels divide representatives. There was no State of the State address and little opening day pageantry. Nobody met Wednesday because of inaugural security concerns, as you know, which might have been founded, but didn't amount to anything, thank goodness. Now the lawmaking begins. Appropriately, our three Line Opinion panelists are joining us by Zoom. One, a very familiar but always welcome face, Attorney Sophie Martin. I love that wave, Sophie. And two, we'll continue to see more of, former reporter for the Santa Fe New Mexican, Steve Terrell, and radio personality TJ Trout, he was the host of his own show on 96.3 KOB, afternoons 3 to 6 p.m. Welcome to all of you. Steve, let me start with you, our legislative veteran. Republicans in both chambers are upset about the way the Democratic majority has gone about setting up the session. They say it's not transparent, harder to testify in committee, and easier to make last-minute changes to legislation that gets minimal security. I want to get your early thought on that. What have you sensed so far?
Well, they may actually have a point there about, public access, because there is no public access except for Zoom. So, yeah, that's I don't know if I'd do it any differently. But that is a problem. Mm-hmm. Of course, when the legislature is in session, some of those tiny little committee rooms, if you're not there, an hour before the committee meeting meets, you're not going to get a seat.
Right.
So there's access issues even with when there's not a pandemic and it is open.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, let me ask you this, Steve. I got another thing for you here. Your old colleague Robert Knott wrote about, quote, work groups, end quote, that key lawmakers are assembling instead of conference committees to conduct negotiations in private. This is vastly the other direction that folks were expecting when transparency was the issue here. I'm curious what you think about that. I mean, it's almost daring people to, have a problem with this.
Yeah. I'd have a problem with that if I was trying to cover the legislature too. Mm-hmm. The truth is, a lot of people just don't like to do business in public. When people tend to speechify, and make grand rhetoric when they could just be doing work. I have a problem with that. I can't wait for this thing to be over.
Exactly.
Not the session, but the pandemic.
Exactly. Hey, TJ Trout.
Yes.
There's a lot of concerns out there about lobbyists not able to do their thing, so to speak. And if you all want to touch on this, that's fine too. Yeah. Access is an issue. We have a citizen legislature. It is all about access, human access. Right. Is the public being served when lobbyists can't get access?
You know what drives me nuts? We got a freaking pandemic going on. Mm-hmm. And we're in new territory here. Nobody's had to go through this before. And so we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants here. Mm-hmm. And it just irritates me to no end that, look, we have to adapt, because if we don't adapt, what are we going to do? So what are our options here? Do we want to risk people getting infected, sick, possibly dying, because some people are insisting that all this stuff gets done in person? I think that is absolutely ridiculous. We have to understand what the country and what we're going through right now. I mean, we have to adapt. We have to adapt right now. It's not going to work. Now, yesterday I had I was talking on the air about this, and I think the best way with lobbyists to get access, I think every day at noon, you hold a tailgate back in the parking lot. You get the brats, you get the beer, you get everybody out there in the parking lot, come together, and
Nice.
they can be
Sponsored by
lobbied, they can
P&M,
express
sponsored
their
by-
issues, and sure, just go crazy. The thing is, in the past, it would have happened that way behind closed doors anyway. So bring it out into the open.
Right.
Have it in the parking lot.
That's right. Sophie, we're laughing, but transparency is like the word around here for the last decade. We need to have some transparency
Sure.
here.
That's true.
Yeah.
And, I think about the fact that it was just a few years ago that there was a tremendous amount of pushback against broadcasting legislative sessions,
Right.
that you had to actually kind of be in the room, for lack of a better way to put it, in order to really participate. And I think actually of the changes, to TJ's point, the changes that we've all had to make, and seeing how the courts in New Mexico, which is dealing with major constitutional rights issues, et cetera, have tried to remain sensitive to, on one hand, we have to balance the rights of the people with the fact that we have this pandemic going on, and we need to try to keep people safe. One of the disappointing things I have to say about the state Republican Party's response to these issues is that they haven't come forward with, here's how, if we're concerned about transparency and access and all of those things, which the Republicans say they are, their solution is, let's wait and not have our legislative session right now. But I think most New Mexicans would probably agree that waiting even longer than we've had to wait for solutions from our government is not in fact a good option. And so I would have liked to have seen the Republicans come with more constructive ideas, like the tailgate idea, which I had heard before. I really like. It's going to be cold, but okay. But this is the thing: if we're all operating in goodwill, and I think you may have your opinions about that. If we're operating in goodwill, okay, so bring it. What are your proposals besides let's just not have government for several more months?
Good point there. Or showing up at the on the first day, almost like a stunt. Hey, Steve, I got an interesting question for you. This has been an interesting thing. There's always a lot of complaints that power is held in committee chair seats on both House and Senate side by folks in the Rio Grande Valley, basically. A lot of Santa Feans holding, tough seats. But we have two Gallup-ites, so to speak, now holding some pretty killer seats, finance and appropriations. And I'm just curious where you see the committee chair power shift happening. What's your sense of it so far at this point in the session?
I was pretty surprised that Mimi Stewart, who's the new Senate President pro tem, went ahead and appointed George Munoz, who is one of the more conservative Democrats in the whole Senate caucus, to that post. I have nothing against George myself, but he was the only one who survived of that whole conservative, moderate Democrat group that was targeted. Yep. And he survived, and now he's finance chairman. That did surprise me. I saw Joe Monahan making speculation that there's probably some deal between them, and that he may be very well right there.
But Steve, don't you think, Mimi Stewart, you mentioned her. I got to think had to have been a conversation between her and Mr. Munoz about when she can expect certain bills to draw. Do you know what I mean? This is not something she's just going to take a chance at by appointing this seat. Am I wrong on that?
She is not stupid. No, Mimi's pretty sophisticated when it comes to stuff like that. So, yeah. So that probably was part of the deal that that we're all speculating about.
Can I just jump in on that quickly?
Absolutely.
I think it's really interesting. I noticed the quote from Mimi Stewart about the appointment. She didn't say, at least not the quote that I saw, she didn't say, we're so thrilled, this is going to be, a grand new era. She said he was the next in line. And that suggested, that suggested to me that there, perhaps to Steve's point, there was sort of something going on there. But it did sound like, okay, well, here's what I got. Here's how I can justify this. He was the next in line.
That's interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Hey, TJ, I got another one here too. It's interesting. Payday lending has reappeared. There's now an idea to cap the 175% interest rate down to 36%. And, I don't know. Any sense where lawmakers, can we finally get somewhere on this issue? Is this the time to get payday lending wrestled to the ground?
Sure.
Good time.
I mean, obviously, there's a problem. Anything that charges 175% interest. I mean, you kind of got to look at it. To your point, I mean, yes, I mean, we have so many other pressing issues right now that maybe it's not the time. Can I bring up one of my pressing issues? Do you mind?
No, I don't mind at all.
One of my pet issues this year in the state legislative session is Wi-Fi for the entire state. We've been discussing. I don't mean to wrest control from you, but I mean, it's something. Topic. It's always been my opinion that Wi-Fi should be treated like a public utility. And at this point should be required. They should be required to provide state access, even in remote areas. And I think this is so important when you consider the state of our education system right now and what we're going through with the pandemic. I mean, if you got all these school kids who do not have access to Wi-Fi, how are they going to learn remotely? And so I just hope something is moved forward there this time. Anyway, for what it's worth, had to bring that up. Sorry.
No, no need to apologize. That's a great subject. We talk about it a lot.
I remember talking about that like 20 some years ago. There are parts of the state that, frankly, where will I plug in my computer because there's no electricity? But the Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi has been an issue throughout, and we still haven't fixed it. And here we are. To TJ's point, it's a crisis. It's a crisis for this poor kid who has to go. They've resolved the issue then, but international news in New Mexico, kid goes and sits outside a library every day. You remember that earlier in 2020 in order to be able to attend school. Kids going to McDonald's to try and attend school. It's beyond. I think it's beyond time. And it kind of goes back to that issue of the legislation, the legislature. How do you have access to the legislature? Well, it's an opportunity, right? Because you don't have to drive to Santa Fe, but not if there's no Wi-Fi in your community.
That's right. Good point there.
Yes, I'm applauding you, TJ. I agree.
Good stuff, TJ. Absolutely. We're out of time on that one. When this group comes back, we'll talk about Joe Biden's immigration plan. A study came out this week revealing that PFAS, toxic man-made chemicals associated with products like firefighting foams, nonstick cookware, and fire-retardant fabrics, are showing up in New Mexico's waters. Scientists have found the chemicals across the state, from pretty remote reaches of the Gila River to right here, Albuquerque stretch of the Rio Grande. Correspondent Laura Paskus spoke with the New Mexico Environment Department's Rebecca Roos to find out more about the state study and what it means.
The past couple of years, the focus has largely been around Cannon Air Force Base and Clovis and Holloman Air Force Base outside of Alamogordo. If I understand correctly, this study is taking a broader view of looking around the state. Can you describe sort of geographically where these sampling locations are to start with?
Sure. Yeah, this really does represent an important concrete shift for the department to more proactive work on the topic of PFAS, which is really exciting for us. It's still incredibly important that we carry out and continue our work to address the PFAS contamination that is well known at Department of Defense facilities in our state. So that is very much still a focus and ongoing, but here we are able to be more proactive in finding out more on our own about where PFAS may be. So we've selected sites around the state in 16 counties, and there are a number of, as I said before, locations where we're testing groundwater sources, and then a number of locations where we're testing surface water. And it really does cover a large portion of the state with different sampling sites around the state, with some emphasis in areas where we know that there are potential sources of PFAS. There's been a lot of research and study, a lot of other states and federal agencies doing analysis for a number of years about where does PFAS come from? Like if it shows up in our water, where might it be coming from? And so we were able to do some analysis of the types of industrial activities that can be associated with PFAS, and then make some strategic decisions about where to best deploy our limited sampling resources as a starting point.
And in New Mexico, in addition to military installations, what are some of the businesses or industries where you're maybe looking at a little more closely?
Well, and we're looking at places nearby certain types of industries, not targeting particular businesses or industrial plants themselves. So in terms of what those sectors are that are indicators that we might want to test for PFAS in the water, that includes electroplating, and there's a well-known association with PFAS for nonstick pan manufacturing, those types of things that are nonstick, fireproof materials. So it's common for us to be looking around any places that might deploy firefighting materials on a routine basis: airports, fire departments, fire station training facilities, things like that.
So as these sampling results have been coming in, are there spots in New Mexico where you're seeing PFAS detected in water sources?
So that's a great question. And this is what we're announcing this week is our first collection of new data from a number of different sources. And we tested for over 20 different PFAS contaminants for which there are approved analytical methods to look for the chemicals in the labs. And good news is we haven't found anything that's alarming to us from a public health standpoint at this stage. We're going to put all the data, it's going to be available to the public on our website, and we'll be here to answer questions if people have concerns. And we've sent letters to each of the public water systems that are associated with one of our test sites so that they can become more familiar with what we looked for and what we found. We did find in some of our sampling sites low levels of PFOA and PFOS, two of the most commonly talked about PFAS chemicals. Nothing anywhere near what is the current EPA lifetime health advisory of 70 parts per trillion. And then for some other the PFAS chemicals, we saw some results in both the surface water and the groundwater. And again, at this point, we're very pleased to see that so far we're learning a lot, but we're also not seeing anything to cause us a lot of concern or alarm. It's going to help us do better work going forward to have as much data as we possibly can as well.
So it's sort of the next phases of the studies. Are there certain places that you'll focus on more intensely, or how will the next phases go?
Well, it's there as we move forward. We sort of at the beginning of the study identified what we were hoping to cover throughout the course of the study as we continue to do more sampling over time. So we've identified the sites around the state, again, both groundwater and surface water, that our sampling team, which includes the U.S. Geological Survey, that's helping with the actual collection and analysis of the samples. They'll be getting out in many of the same counties that we've been to so far, but at additional locations, and providing more data over more coverage across the state as we go forward.
So one of the things that we often struggle with is not wanting to alarm people about toxic chemicals in their water supplies, but also not in any way wanting to diminish the fact that there are public health risks to exposure to PFAS. And I'm curious how the department balances that, especially in an arid state like New Mexico, where not just drinking water, but any type of water is really important to the state and to the state's sustainable future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I run the water protection division, so we're thinking about water quality across so many different issues and angles, and we are every day trying to identify, address, remediate, and hold people accountable for contamination where we have it, including, but absolutely not limited to, PFAS. And we don't want to take anything for granted with our water resources in the state. It's partly why we continue to raise externally, Secretary Kenny, our cabinet secretary, and others, how important it is that we give the state a chance to tackle water quality in every way we possibly can by making sure that we're putting enough resources to these critical issues. And right now we are having to make really tough choices at the department of how many people can we have thinking about and working on PFAS, because then we aren't tackling maybe other types of contamination, other sources of water quality concerns. Maybe we're having to pull back other types of water quality monitoring in the field because we're ramping up in other areas. We're making those kinds of tough choices every day, and that limits our ability to really tackle all of the problems as cohesively and comprehensively as we'd like to.
Thank you, Rebecca, so much for joining me. I appreciate your work.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Incoming presidents are supposed to think big, at least that's what we've come to expect. And Joe Biden has his sights set on immigration reform. The Biden plan does not include more border wall construction, as you might imagine. It does include a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants and a fast track for some essential workers and people protected under the DACA program. Now, TJ, let me start there. This is a huge swing to take at first pitch. Just the same, though, both Republicans and Democrats want reform. They do want reform. Everybody wants reform. What do you see here from this early?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've said this from the beginning that if Biden really wanted to start to unite us all and make peace with the other side, he should choose an issue that is important to the other side, very important to them. I suggested this way back, that coming up with a bipartisan, common sense immigration and border security plan would be the perfect way to start. Now, of course, what's going to happen, he's got his plan that's going to go to Congress. And I'm sure what he is proposing would not be the end all. I'm sure it will be debated. Hopefully it will be debated. They will come up with a bipartisan plan and then send it back to him. But, I mean, it's a huge issue. Talked to Steve Pierce a couple of years ago about this, and he said, look, this actually is simpler than you think. He says there is so much consensus on both sides with common sense border security and immigration that it can be solved, he said. And Steve Pierce tells me this can be solved working in a bipartisan manner. I tend to believe him.
I'm actually touching my earpiece. Make sure I heard that correctly. That's amazing.
Well,
wow.
Right. So yes, I think it was a brilliant first move on the Biden administration's part. I mean, again, I just want to reiterate, what's going to go to Congress is not what we're going to see come out of Congress.
Good point. Hey, Sophie, and on that note, Sophie, interesting, TJ just put it up that way. Early reaction, Marco Rubio, Chuck Grassley, Tom Cotton. The amnesty word is back, and it didn't take but 3 hours to throw it out there after Biden put the plan out. What's your sense of it?
I think it's interesting that you bring up Marco Rubio, and before I sort of launch into him, I just want to make the point that this issue, the immigration issue, really touches New Mexico from the southern border to the northern and from east to west, whether it is concerns about folks coming up through ranches in the southern part of the state to the green chili, who's picking our green chili here in New Mexico, to dreamers living in various parts of the state who are actively involved in our lives. I'm not putting that well, but we have professionals at every level. I think people tend to think of immigrants as not really filling our entire community, but in New Mexico, certainly that is the case. So this is essential for us, and it is a crisis for us here in New Mexico that hasn't been addressed. I love TJ's point that that there is the possibility for consensus here. I mean, I just remember the Bush Republicans saying, we want this too, business wants it too. I think it's very disingenuous, frankly, of Marco Rubio, who was very involved in the last major push for immigration reform, to be talking about amnesty and my stars and garters. I think what we're looking at there, unfortunately, is a Republican caucus. And this is how politics work, right? They're looking for their pound of flesh here. They
a little
for other things. And so when they act like this can't be done, I think to Steve Pierce's point, and knowing the history of the Republican Party, you should be able to get it done. It's what we're going to have to trade with each other in order to make that happen, that I think is the source of some heartburn.
You know, Steve, TJ makes an excellent point. It seems to me the more I'm thinking about it, more Sophie's, making the point as well, that let's assume there's some kind of success here. That would be an extraordinary leap forward for this country in one fell swoop, if you think about it, just some kind of immigration reform. But let me talk specifics with you, though, too. This is interesting. In case anybody watching doesn't know, this only applies to undocumented immigrants in the U.S. as of January 1st of this year. Yeah. That's a very, very key distinction. And like Sophie says, and TJ, the negotiation is going to start from there, so to speak. So I'm curious of your sense of this as you're hearing the other two go through this.
I'm cynical.
Are you?
I'm more cynical than TJ or Sophie.
Yeah.
We've seen this so many times before. One man's common sense is another man's lunacy. So it's, I don't know. I'll believe it. And I hope it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I hope everybody's right, but I hope everybody takes this opportunity. But I don't know. We've come off, all these years of partisanship, even before Trump. And it's only gotten worse, and it's not going to get better overnight. I noticed in one of the national accounts I read about it, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic majority leader, didn't seem real key on. He said, "Well, we've got to deal with COVID-19 and some of this other stuff first." And I think they may be punting it, kicking the can down the road, as the saying goes, and perhaps for good reason. So
are we all?
I remain very skeptical.
Steve, is that skepticism? And you wouldn't be alone, by the way, on your skepticism.
Yeah.
Are we all triggered up by immigration? And you think about it, we've been screaming at each other for like 30 years on this, with barely any movement. And I say again, if something can crack here, I got to think it would work out for the Biden administration in tremendous ways if you can take advantage of what little bipartisanship that comes early in a situation and just try to do something with it. Still,
one area where there might be some cause for optimism is the Dreamers, DACA. When you have this huge bill with all these various aspects, which sometimes is necessary, of course, but I think if they could just do a separate thing on the Dreamers, make that, and then DACA, I think they could get a lot of bipartisan support from that.
That's right.
And you start from there, and then, maybe the amnesty work wouldn't.
I think too, though, it's not just Dreamers, but there's also, I think, an argument to be made, as has been made in the past, that many of our healthcare workers, are affected by this issue. And right now, when you say we need to support our healthcare workers, there may be some room there. We really have, especially with some of the other immigration programs that have been constrained by the Trump administration, we have a lot of need for people who are working in these essential areas, and many of them are currently or potentially occupied jobs that are occupied by immigrants.
That's a very good point. Sophie. Interesting. It's going to be about filling jobs and getting needs met, partly. TJ, quick point here, too. We've got about a minute and a half or about a minute. Here's the path to a green card. 5 years of paying taxes, passing a background check, and other hurdles. Dreamers could apply immediately. That just came up just a second ago. And once the green card is issued, it's another 3 years to naturalize citizenship. And that's the 8 years Biden's talking about. It's super aggressive when you think about it, compared to what we have been used to for years and years and years and years. Is that number going to be a gag for folks? Is 8 years just going to be a little too quick for some people out there?
Well, too quick is interesting, because this has to be addressed immediately.
Right.
Well, the thing is, but to your point, 30 years, we've been waiting for a real solution on this. 8 years, man. Well, the one thing too is with the Dreamers, with the people who are undocumented in this country, if we expect them to actually come out and say, okay, we trust the United States government now, we're going to register with the United States government because we trust you that you're not going to just deport us. So you need somehow for the government to garner that trust from the people that we're speaking with. Plus, also, I'm going to go back to another point. I know we don't have much time. We need these workers. I mean, there is so much hypocrisy right now, grandstanding about not needing. We need these workers to do the jobs in our food processing plants and jobs that other Americans will not take. And there's a huge amount of hypocrisy there that has to be addressed.
Good point. Good final point on that one. This group returns one last time to talk about the FBI arrest of the leader of the Cowboys for Trump organization and lingering issues for Republicans who cozied up to the group. New Mexico's music industry is patiently waiting for the end of COVID-19. Musicians dream of once again being able to perform live at venues across the state, but with no idea when live shows can be a possibility, musicians and their managers will continue to miss out on that crucial income. Correspondent Megan Kemrick talked to band manager Sydney Counts, who works with local act Dust City Opera, about her frustrations and the inequities in finding grant money to fuel New Mexico's dormant live music scene.
Sydney Counts, thanks for joining us on New Mexico in Focus. Sydney, as the manager of a local musical group in Albuquerque, can you give us a rundown of how the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the musical scene in New Mexico for you and your group?
Sure, of course. I mean, everything is at a standstill right now. It's basically completely shuttered, and it's been that way for going on a year. Venues are closed. For live musicians, we rely on the ability to congregate in groups, and without certainty around when we can do that again for the foreseeable future, we're out of work.
And when the pandemic hit, Dust City Opera was just making the shift into being a touring band. How long has it been since the band has performed live? And what was the financial loss of investing in shows that you couldn't play?
Really great questions. We were just about to embark on our first major tour the week that MLG announced the shutdown. We were days away from, yes, we were days away from hitting the road and made the difficult decision to cancel everything. We had no idea what was going to happen or how long we were going to remain shuttered. And I don't think I'll ever get over the impact of investing in a tour that we weren't able to take. And beyond that, it wasn't like we could stay home and continue to perform here in our home state. We can't get together at all. Singing is a super spreader event, so we can't record, we can't rehearse, and so we're not generating an income right now, like so many musicians across the country and the world.
Was this tour, give me a sense of where you guys were in terms of your ascent professionally? This was going to be a pretty big deal for you to be on this national tour.
Absolutely. So the band started out in 2018, and I took over management. In 2019, we had just been named Artist of the Year by Modern Musician, and that was giving us a ton of momentum going into 2020. We were headed to South by Southwest, which I think was the first major event to cancel.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It was shocking at the time. And we thought, can we still make this tour happen? Can we just go play all of our other stops? You know, we were going to go around, certainly New Mexico and Texas, over into Oklahoma. And we were just trying to wrap our heads around what is going on? How can we make this happen? Is it safe? Are we going to be able to come home if we leave the state? We just didn't understand quite the impact of COVID-19 at the time.
Musical artists these days make the majority of their money performing live at venues. With virtually no live performances in New Mexico, the industry is turning to grants and funding from outside sources to pay the bills. Now, you and other people have been applying for this money. Have you been successful in getting it?
No.
Okay.
No, and most of the musicians that I talk to and other people in our industry, keep in mind, it's not just musicians that are impacted. I'm a manager. There are, stage crew, venue owners, a lot of people beyond the performers are feeling the impact. And although there are grants out there, by and large, they're too small. They're restricted to certain people. Either you have to be a performer or do a certain type of performance. And many are depleted. Many of the grant opportunities are no longer available. So we've received very little funding. It's not enough. And certainly talking about the CARES grant, the most recent CARES grant, I don't know a single person like myself, a freelance worker, a musician, or somebody in our industry that received the money. And even if we had received it, we were capped at only getting $2,000. That isn't enough. That's just, it's not enough.
You don't know of any other musical groups that got accepted for the CARES grant?
Not a single one, and I've been asking around.
Equity in some of these grants is an issue. The average payout for CARES was around $15,000. Compare that to getting $2,000. I mean, this is your livelihood, right? It's not just like something on the side.
Right. It is. I think it's a real shame. Our industry, the entertainment industry, often is overlooked. And when we all think about getting through this pandemic, we're at home. What are we turning to? We're turning to entertainment. We're streaming TV. We're streaming music. So I think people don't realize that the importance of keeping our industry alive. But when it comes time to fund us, we're overlooked time and time again. There's just not enough money for us. We also don't have the representation that we need. Freelance workers, there's nobody lobbying for us. We're not protected by a union. There's nobody speaking up for us at the government level saying funding needs to happen for these people. So we are often left out.
Have you and the band been able to take advantage of some, there's been a number of musical groups who've done streaming concerts, streaming events. I know that's probably nowhere near the revenue you'd get in an in-person event, but have you been able to take advantage of any of that?
You're right. And we have, we've been able to do a couple of streaming events in partnership with AMP Concerts in the Launchpad, but it's still not safe. And we've had to turn down some of those because our band is made up of people from different households with different jobs and different risk levels. And it's really challenging, even though it's on screen for our viewers, there's still that risk of getting the band together to perform. And they don't generate very much income for us. And it's just not the same energy as going to a show. People get really excited. They want to buy up all the merch. They want to buy more tickets. It's just not the same.
Yeah. What about funding from other sources? Is any of that viable?
Sure. I've looked into, I want to say probably somewhere between 40 and 50 grants that we would somehow qualify for. Again, most of those are completely depleted. I had hopes that in the new year with new budgets, there would be more funding opportunities. And I haven't really found much here in January for us. Also, being in New Mexico, we're excluded from a lot of opportunities for people in our industry that are based in, let's say, LA and California or in New York. Many of these grants are restricted by territory. So we're being left out again, being here in New Mexico.
I did not realize that. As you say, this goes beyond musical groups. I mean, there's a whole ecosystem, right, around live music that enables live music to happen. So what is the impact there?
Well, it's tough. Like if I wanted to apply for funding just for myself as a manager, I don't have a lot of options as a freelance worker. Many of the grants that are aimed towards the music industry are for musicians. They are not for venue owners. They are not for stage crew or sound engineers, agents, promoters. So that's really challenging because I am impacted just the same as my musicians are impacted. And I think that's just another level, another layer of the economy that's being overlooked and left out.
You've said that you feel obliterated and ignored, that the industry is being obliterated and ignored.
I do feel that way. And I also feel that there's a lot of uncertainty around the future. The live music industry is very much a future-based industry. It's January right now. In normal times, I would be planning shows for this summer or even the fall. So not only am
Can
I
you
not
do that?
I can't work now, and I can't plan for the future. And so that uncertainty is creeping into, the mental health of myself and others. A lot of people I reached out to about their funding, they said, well, yeah, I need money, but also emotionally I'm suffering, not just financially, mentally. The uncertainty is really, really scary for folks that don't know. There's no end in sight. We can't even plan for the future right now. And it's really scary.
I can imagine. And you mentioned the last relief package by Congress. There's $15 billion that's set aside for music venues everywhere. It's important that small venues like the Launchpad or El Rey Theater get this money. But if the bands can't perform live at these venues, do we know where this money will be going?
I'm not sure. I feel like I'm in a difficult situation because, of course, I want to see these venues make it out the other side. I want all of us to make it out the other side. But without bands coming out to perform, I'm not sure exactly where that money's going. I know they have staff to take care of. I personally know a lot of the folks that work at El Rey and Launchpad, and I, hope to God that they're doing okay and being able to get by. But that money is certainly not passing through those venues to people like me or the bands that I represent or the other musicians in the state. It's just not making an impact for us.
What are others involved in the music industry saying? I mean, frustration, anger, are people in the same boat as you all?
A lot of people are in the same position, and certainly people are frustrated. I wouldn't say I've heard a lot of anger, more sadness and uncertainty, deep sense of isolation. A lot of people that choose this industry choose it because we're extroverts. We thrive on the energy of others, and being isolated long-term without knowing when we can get together is a lot to process. I think collectively we're in a trauma state, and we can't even comfort one another. We can't get together and say it's going to be okay. So I hear a lot of sadness and worry about what will happen. And when we do reopen, what is it going to look like? Because I don't think it will look the same. Will venues be able to pay pre-pandemic rates? Will concert goers come out and buy up enough tickets for us to continue to perform? We don't know financially what it's going to look like when we come out the other end.
Have you guys been able to rehearse online? I've heard musicians say that's hard because there's a lag. So trying to sync with each other is
we've tried
difficult.
a few. That's a really good question, and we've tried a few things. Dust City Opera, we're a pretty large ensemble. There are 7 people, not including myself. So getting together in our home studio, even when we've done COVID testing and been really safe about it, it's kind of awkward. It's a lot of effort with very little return for us. Right now, the best that we can do is we're trying to piece together recorded material from pre-pandemic times and see if we can get that released to keep that fan connection alive. We're desperately trying to find ways to connect with our fans and keep that connection alive. But it's really hard. It's really hard right now.
It's unsure exactly when it will be safe, as you say, for people to congregate in musical venues again. So other than the obvious financial help, what else would help people like you stay afloat while we weather the pandemic?
Sure. I think for me, what I think needs to happen is we need to see a lot more action at the federal level, at the national level. It would be great if we had, let's say, like a national mask mandate, things that are going to set the pace for us to be able to come back together, a better vaccine rollout for the country, mask mandate for the country, because when it does come time for us to start performing again, we can't tour if things are going to be different state to state. We need to have certainty that we can have across the board rules around capacity limits for congregating, mask mandates, vaccines available to the public. I would like to see some action on that. And I'm hoping with the new administration, we'll see that.
Well, and also there are other countries that do have funds to support artists.
Right.
And performers, and that's really helping in these times. And we've never really had a very robust infrastructure like that.
We haven't, and it's really unfortunate because I think, again, I can't stress enough the importance of the arts for the community, especially in getting other people through the pandemic who turn to the arts as an escape, whether it be sitting down and watching Netflix or putting on your headphones and listening to your favorite band.
Well, and it's such an intrinsic part of what makes New Mexico unique is our creative economy. So, and you all are part of that. So it's not just oil and gas and other businesses that are suffering. It's hurting everyone, and that's ultimately hurting New Mexico. So I'm hopeful. We've already lost some organizations, and I'm hopeful we can come through this, and folks like you will once again be on stage live with your fans.
I hope so too.
Thank you so much, Sydney. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Federal authorities arrested Cowboys for Trump leader Couy Griffin last Sunday and branded him a threat to the community after he bragged at an Otero County Commission meeting that he was going to take a .357 Henry Big Boy rifle and another .357 handgun in his car to Washington. The FBI took notice, got an arrest warrant for Mr. Griffin. They put him in cuffs and in jail, saying his threats have to be taken seriously. That's news to Steve Pierce and Yvette Harrell, who have offered milquetoast criticisms of Mr. Griffin's previous violent rhetoric, but, especially in Ms. Harrell's case, welcomed the support of Cowboys for Trump, didn't she? They're backing away now, quietly. Sophie, purely as a political move, will this sort of soft rebuke save face with the far right of the party, or is the damage done for Ms. Harrell in 2022?
I think that remains to be seen. That's far enough away in people's memories.
In political terms, exactly. Right.
Yeah, it's going to matter what she does in the in between. I think that it's a dangerous situation for her, depending on what Griffin does. What happens with him going forward. But one of the things that I think is sort of remarkable, and there's been a fair amount of discussion about this online, is here's this guy who's gotten away with it. I think of another Griffin, Kathy Griffin, who got a visit from the Secret Service for holding up a dummied up, head of Donald Trump, sort of John the Baptist style. And she got a visit right away. And this guy's been getting away with it for a long time. And then suddenly it is serious. It is real. That must have been a real stunner for him. And I think also for other people who have been engaged in that kind of public rhetoric.
Hey, TJ, interestingly, when I think about KOB, you guys have had Steve Pierce on a ton, and rightfully so, as the local station here. Any sense of how conservatives see him in this whole situation so far? What's the feedback you're getting from your listeners and callers?
I've not gotten much feedback about Steve Pierce. Actually, quite frankly, I have not had him on for a while, so I guess that's on me. I'll tell you what, man, I think 2 Wednesdays ago, the entire tide has shifted. And to our point, we didn't see any further violence on Inauguration Day or at the statewide level. And I think that was in particular because of the violence 2 days ago, because I think it was so outrageous. Back to Couy Griffin. I mean, we've known what's going on with him for a long time. It's no surprise to anybody what he's been saying. His words have been tinged with violence or the implication of violence for a long time. I think it just took what happened again 2 Wednesdays ago for people to go, well, maybe he shouldn't have been saying these things, And Sophie, to your point, whether this is going to stick with Yvette Harrell, I'll tell you right now, I think the Dems are salivating right now at this and looking at this. Well, there is our campaign issue coming up in 2022. They're not going to let this go. I don't see how they could possibly let this go. It's just too big of an issue.
Steve, when you tally up the scorecard here for Mr. Griffin, I mean, we're talking about the only good Democrat is a dead Democrat. He gets kicked off an Indian reservation. Who's ever been kicked off an Indian reservation? I can't think of one person in my life. going back, telling black people to move back to Africa. This has been going on for like 4 months. I mean, we suffered an entire summer of this. I don't understand where the county commission might be coming from on this. Patience is one thing, but how long can they let this go on?
Well, in the terms of the Otero County Commission, the other two members, as we all know, have been saying that he should resign, and if not, they're going to support Hector Balderas and trying to have him removed.
Right.
I'm not sure what the law is about the removing. It may involve a jury trial and stuff, but it seemed like that. I don't know. I think he's and they're very conservative people. These aren't liberal cucks or anything.
Right.
These are true conservatives and true Trump conservatives who are sick of the guy, and they're the ones who work with him. So, I think his days are numbered there. I don't know how the court case is going to turn out or anything. Mm-hmm. I was shocked when I learned that Coy Griffin actually used to work for Disney World in Paris as a cowboy, a Disney cowboy. And
that's true.
My first reaction was maybe quit when they came out with the movie Pocahontas and he found out it wasn't about Elizabeth Warren.
Good one, Stu. Good one.
The guy's just amazing, and I think his time is up.
Yeah. Hey, Sophie, you mentioned, and Steve just mentioned it as well, the idea that. I'm sorry, Steve's last joke just kind of blipped me out of my head there, but it was so awesome. The idea that one can be so controversial for so long and not have consequences. I think this is what people are looking for, is consequences. All right, it's one thing to be a now bootless cowboy arrested by the FBI, but I think, how about Mr. Balderas? Where was he 4 weeks ago? Yeah, he's got a stiff letter out there now saying you need to, rein it in or we're going to do something about it. But where was this 6 weeks ago from him?
Well, I think when we talk about consequences, there are so many different layers and levels of consequences, right? And part of that is because of the First Amendment and our country's ongoing commitment to the First Amendment. And so, this is a person who made statements that I think in an older context were distasteful, may have been, upsetting, but that didn't as clearly as immediately seem to rise to the level of the shouting fire in the crowded movie house, which is one of the standards that we talk about when we talk about the First Amendment. And so, why were there not consequences amongst the voters in which the voters in Otero County said, we're not interested in doing this anymore? I mean, that's certainly a very legitimate, not really involving the First Amendment kind of thing. Let's just vote the guy out. Why weren't there consequences in the media?
Did he win? Was he up for election in 2020?
I don't believe so, but he didn't just start.
Because in 2018, nobody knew who he was.
He didn't sprout, but he didn't sprout horns immediately, right? So, there's the consequence of the voters, there's the consequence in the community. There are whole levels. Why is he getting the attention? I'm part of me when I knew we were going to talk about him today was a little sad that we were going to give him more oxygen. Although we seem to be condemning him, which is, I'm okay with that. But there are limitations on what government can do because of the power and the importance of the First Amendment. And you sort of watch for okay, have we crossed the line? Do we think we've crossed the line? And it may be that when, this all shakes out, it could be that the courts find that he didn't cross the line, even though his statements are extraordinarily distasteful and many people that they were an incitement to violence. And we're going to have to see where the courts establish that line in his case.
That is I'm so appreciative of you bringing that up. There are free speech issues and First Amendment issues, no doubt, as we kind of guffaw here. I appreciate that. Hey, I want to go.
Don't apply just when we want them to.
That's right. Exactly right. And that's, this is why we have attorneys like you to bring balance to the situation. I want to go around the horn here real quick. TJ, starting with you. Yep. Obviously, we've got fencing up around the roundhouse. No one's liking that, but we got to have it. We didn't have problems, but we do still have open carry in the roundhouse. And I don't think that's going anywhere, certainly. I'm not questioning that. But what's your sense of, and for all of you, what's your sense of how we've approached the potential problems with the roundhouse and how we're dealing with it?
Well, I think the response after, again, I keep bringing up 2 Wednesdays ago, was completely legitimate and a responsible thing to do. I mean, you have threats all over social media saying that we're going to, we're coming. What are you supposed to do? Of course, you have to do something like that. And again, I'm going to shift gears a little bit one more time, because to look at the broader picture here. I'm so upset with certain proponents of the media right now. I'm just spitting angry. That's how angry I am with some of these people for perpetuating some of the lies and the mistruths that have led up to what has happened and have caused us to have to put fencing around our roundhouse and our beloved sacred places of government based on lies, and lies were perpetuated from the top down, and then with certain elements of the media perpetuating and enabling the lies.
A beautiful
and
last
that's
note.
why we are That's why we are where we are right now. I am incensed about this.
TJ Trout, Sophie Martin, Steve Terrell, I can't thank you guys enough. Thanks for everyone for reading up and offering your thoughts. My final thoughts in a minute. I don't know about you, but for some reason, I've never been so grateful for a legislative session to start. Strange as that may sound, the return to some form of normalcy has been soothing to my political junkie soul. Better yet, it's the home front. And to me, the only problems worth worrying about are the ones that are closest to your home and your wallet. Now, there's work to be done, but as the kids say, everyone in the legislative body is woke now. Now, what excites me most is the energy and ideas that come with new seat holders and committee chairs, because we have leaps that need to be made that are so huge, we can only get there with bold strokes that move the ball downfield quickly. Now, yes, process is important with our legislative setup, and there was an honest effort to implement something that allows the process to be both accessible and transparent as reasonably possible. Now, it remains to be seen if the steps taken to keep everyone COVID-free while serving the needs of a participatory citizen legislature, if that all worked out, but that's a good problem, because it's our problem. Thanks again for joining us, for staying informed and engaged. We'll see you again next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation and viewers like you.